Welcome to Mind Shift Power Podcast, a show for teenagers and the adults who work with them, where we have raw and honest conversations. I'm your host, Fatima Bey, the Mind Shifter. And welcome, everyone. Today we have with us Professor Lyrical. He is from the Washington, D.C. area. He is a professor of mathematics at a local university there. He is a PhD, an inspirational speaker, and a rap artist. His entire career has been centered around youth and young adults, which is why he is here today. So how are you doing today, Professor Lyrical?
What's up, Fatima? Thanks for having me. I'm doing great.
Good. I like to dive right into it. So you have all this PhD, you have a PhD, you're really into education. You have a lot of other stuff I didn't even mention. Why rap?
I actually always love that question with the academics and the hip hop. So I was doing rap well before academics. So the real question for a lot of people that know me is why education? You know what I'm saying? Because that definitely came later in life. But to flip it, I mean, so the hip hop has always just been a part of my life since I was a kid. Love creative writing, everything poetry since like first grade, right? I was that kid entering the poetry contest, the name the caption contest. And when I won one of them when I was real little, it kind of made me believe my teacher's hype. She was like, oh, you're so creative, and I stuck with that and really kind of, thanks to a teacher, right? Like that I believed that I was like creative and always kind of remembered the power of that I would get to feel a piece of when you'd be in a classroom talking to other kids as a performer and then seeing the attention that came and the captive audience that the kids would have, because you need cool mentors in society, whatever. And all too often it's hard to get those guests to come through the class. And it hit me. I was just like, this would be a really dope path for me to blend in with just the performing instead of just coming and doing some, look at me, jump around and do my rap thing. Like, what substance are you then going to share with the captive audience? So the education thing made perfect sense. So
that I absolutely love that you took your passion and you decided to do something useful with it other than just entertain. That's actually a principle that I teach a lot, and especially when I go into high schools, but even in just talking to older adults. Okay. You've heard me say this in off air conversation, but I look at some entertainers and I'm like, not impressed a lot. You're rich, you're famous, and you can shake your booty on stage, or you can rap hard, or you can rock hard, whatever the genre is. But so what are you doing with it?
Right.
That's what I look at.
I do give credit to artists who do that well. We all need the respite and the break from reality kind of thing that entertainment affords. But it is really nice. I mean, that's what I gravitate to when you feel like it's not just junk food, right? You feel like there's some substance in the meal, and look at marketing with food really to continue it. It's like, if something sounds a little healthy, we like feel better about it. We're like, this tastes good and it's healthy, right? That's like the ideal. And I don't think it's much different with the way that we consume any entertainment. It's like we want to feel like the mind is getting to be as much of a part of it as possible. So I always love it when it's that way, but I get it when it's not, because sometimes you just want a chocolate bar. You know what I mean? Right.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, doing something with it, that can come in many different ways. So music can be used to uplift. Music can also be used politically and has a big history of that. It can be used to make people aware, to get people to stand up and fight or whatever. That's still a usage. It doesn't all have to be butterflies and cotton candy, but it's still a usage. I'm still impressed. Even if we don't have the same political views, I love it when people use their skills to do something that as they view as helping animals, no whatever.
Sure.
So I love that you did that.
I appreciate it.
So right now, I'm going to let play a tiny little snippet, just a few seconds, of one of your more recent songs. So let's here we go.
This how I get down right here, baby. Follow me for a minute. What's skill level is still better than most of y'all. Posterize your posers who still posting, but most of y'all, it's your subject matter that's lacking. Still have me mad at y'all. Hocus pocus rappers lack focus. Go take your Adderall. My catalog is evolved. Lyrics are classical from the Patterson X-Cal. The castle's mathematical. Strategical moves made this practical. Doomsday for rappers who soothsay some magical.
All right, now that you heard that, you guys heard a little bit of what his music is about. So let me ask you, Professor Lyrical, what would you consider yourself to be most passionate about?
I mean, I default to my son. I've just spent the day with him as well, so a little biased there, but that's usually my first answer. I know for a lot of people, they want like, yeah, we know that, like we know, but nah, it's like more than that. It's like, I want to make the music that my son would have for a blueprint. I want to make the music that he could be proud of. I was just eating with him on the way home from this school activity, and I said to him, we were actually talking about Elf on the Shelf, and I was like, it's always a good idea to act like somebody's watching or somebody's listening, right? And for me, he's that person, right? So I'm really conscious about what I say, what I don't say. So it's hard to say anything but that. And I think if we don't have that person in life, it's almost like fake it, like pretend your grandmother's listening. Like, what would you say? And I realize that sometimes sounds like it could be boring, but I'm like, nah, I want to say something that's going to grab my grandmother, but still grab my son, and it'll grab whoever, my friend in the corner or the person in the boardroom, right? Because if it's true, it should resonate. And so that true resonate part for me is important. Like, just reading a book report and trying to call it a rap probably isn't going to be the greatest thing in the world. But to the previous question too, it's like you can get the substance in there. So trying to blend those paths, for me, I also extend to other people. So I'm real excited when I meet someone whether it's a seminar, conference, education, performing, and you find someone who they talk to you, they're like, yo, you got this career that you do, this passion where you blend them together. Like, how did you come up with that or whatever? And I always flip it. And I'm like, what two things do you really like that don't necessarily appear like they go together? And if you had to, how would you force them together? You know what I mean? And it might feel a little like life coachy or whatever, but I don't think it's too far away from education, So I'm always trying to learn something, try to be a lifelong learner. But when something's working for you, you want to share it. You want to be like, hey, look at this. You can do this too. But you have to feel emboldened to be able to do something that maybe somebody has told you, no one's going to want to hear that. No one's going to want to see that. No one's done that before, And so I guess the long and short of the answer is like, trying to take my viewpoint, being able to share it with somebody else in a way that doesn't just sound like, oh, look at me, look what I'm doing. No, you can do this kind of thing too and put your own spin on it. And for me, that has a lot of reward back to me. So that's a piece of inspiration, finding the inspiration in music, inspiring others to kind of do something like that. Every time I go out, I'm kind of leading with that, if I can. And if I'm just up on a stage saying a song, I hope they like it enough that they're going to find something else. So if I can, stay centered on those things too, outside of just my son, that's probably what does it for me.
Okay. I like that. You've taken bits and pieces of your personal life and gave them a purpose that fuels you for what you do. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
Now tell us why, because, a lot of youth don't feel like education matters. It's boring. Right. It's what's forced on us. We just do it because we gotta do it. Right. But why does education actually matter?
I mean, it's like the $1 million question. When you're in it and you don't see the reward coming, like whether you're practicing dribbling moves on a basketball court, but nobody's paying you to play, right? No one's paying you to go to school. No one's offering you a scholarship. No one's paying you NBA money. What's going to make you get up and still do it, right? So that you could get to the level to have that kind of opportunity. And there's a part of that answer in school other than just the altruistic, oh, you're going to better your mind and learn things about the world, right? It's like, let's face it, most students, most kids want to hear about how am I going to better my life? Well, it's the only pathway I know that like pays dividends well after the time you get that piece of paper, right? It'll pay that dividend. No one can take it away. And it's the kind of thing that gives you opportunity. You might be studying something that has nothing to do with what you're going to do for a career, but it's like if you learn how to think critically about a topic, and let's say your reward for that is some university bestows upon you some piece of paper that says, I got my credential in this area. Just the process of doing it is like the process of being on the court when no one's watching and you're out there and you're dribbling, right? And you're just working on your handle, and you're getting better and you're getting better. Someday there may be a payoff, but even if it doesn't come, you've benefited from the process of watching self-betterment happen in real time, right?
Mm-hmm.
I go to the court and I shoot every day and I record it. And I remind myself when I watch the videos, I'm like, you sucked like not too long ago, right? And then you're looking at this video here and you just hit 10 straight. And sometimes we need that visual. Just like I got
Mm-hmm.
records behind me on the wall. Sometimes you need that visual to say, hey, I went and did that, right? And how did I get it done? I was practicing in the lab when no one was looking. It wasn't when the records came out or when the video came out. I was in the lab when no one was looking. I was skipping the party. I was skipping the fun stuff. For me, this is fun, but I was sacrificing something to get it done when no one was looking and there was no reward. You know what I mean? Education is really literally that. It feels crappy. Like, why am I doing this? Once you do have some of those credentials and you start to stack them, they're permanently in the treasure chest, right? And you can whip them out whenever time requires. It stinks you have to do that sometimes, but it isn't it's a door opener and it's an opportunity, if nothing else. And they pay dividends when you least expect it.
I think that's an excellent point. I like the way you phrase that. It's something that the imagery that you give us there keeps giving once you got it. And it's not just a one-time thing, because sometimes people require for certain jobs that you have a bachelor's degree and they don't really care what the topic is.
Yeah.
They just want you to have a piece of paper.
I mean, don't get it twisted.
In some cases.
There's the other side of that coin. I mean, I know I'm making it sound nice, but it's like there's a lot of stuff you're going to do in school that has no relevance to your life whatsoever.
Right.
And sometimes it is in math. Sometimes it isn't the subject I teach, right? It could be in your math class. You might have a job where you're accountant for the rest of your life. Do you really need calculus? The answer is probably no. You know what I'm saying?
You don't. You need
Someone
it in
made
sciences,
you take it though, right?
Yeah. I also want to point out another what I see as a major benefit to education of any kind: discipline. Everything in life that works, anytime anybody has success in anything, doesn't matter what the topic is, doesn't matter what the subject, doesn't matter what the career is. 100% of the time, you need some form of discipline.
Absolutely.
And what I like about education of any kind on any level, it requires some form of discipline.
That's right.
And that alone can prepare you for life in ways that'll pay you more than just money.
Yep.
And people don't even think about it that way, but it's true.
I am inspired by that message always. I rap about that message. If someone says, hey, spit a 16, it's usually going to be a 16 that does that. One of the hooks to probably my first major solo single I had was called The Focus Is Back, when I just went by Lyrical. And it's funny, my son was just listening to the car. So again, it's fresh on my mind. Came out in the album, it was almost called Infinity. It came out in 2005. And the single came out in 2006 on vinyl, right? And the hook of the song is from The Lox. And they say, the determination, the dedication, and discipline. And just the dope way that they said that with all those D's in there, right? It was like, I was using it like my determination, the dedication, and discipline. The focus is back. And so literally talking about staying focused, having determination, dedication, and discipline. It is a secret formula. There's no shortcuts. If you get a shortcut, you're just fortunate. Something fell in your lap. Don't be patting yourself on the back too hard. If you didn't put in the dedication, like you said, it was probably all a house of cards,
I want to interject about shortcuts real quick. Sometimes shortcuts are like microwave food versus oven warmed food. Microwave food, the heat's there, but it doesn't last very long and it's cold in just a couple minutes.
Right.
If you heat up something in the oven, you got that nice crispy edge. The heat lasts for like 20 to 30 minutes. It's not the same quality. Just something to think about.
It's like reheated pizza versus putting that pizza in the oven. I mean, it's totally different.
Microwave.
Like that metaphor. You got some verses. You might have some verses in the future, right? It's all about the metaphors.
So let me ask you this. We're talking about education and how important it is, but what does it look like when we don't get education we need?
So I have a strong take on this. And I know that I'm biased, come from a position of bias here. I've watched a lot of my friends who started out the same as I've done and maybe done something slightly different. There's a lot of examples of some of them who've done way better than I've done. Those are the outliers, is what I want to say out there. It's not the one-offs to pay attention to. We can all say, oh, I have a friend who's a blah, 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 and has done unbelievably well. On average, that's not what's going to happen. On average, the higher your education level typically is going to turn into longer term wealth. We know that statistically, there's countless studies on it, right? So the fact that there are great jobs out there that you can do with your hands or you can do with a certain talent that don't require formal schooling or the traditional academy way of schooling, that's great if you find one of those pathways. But traditionally doing something that requires no education or no skill is usually a pathway to no employment, no income, and no
Mhm.
sustainability, right?
Mhm.
Unless you turn to something that's probably fringe, illegal, or probably not that moral or ethical, right?
Right.
The tried and true pathways have been tried by somebody usually smarter than us, right? And
Sure.
the alternative ones have been tried by somebody smarter than us. But we can watch with the results of the empirical evidence of what usually happens when people take those tributaries, right? So it's like we all want to outsmart the system. We all want to come up with the genius way of doing something. That is like playing the lottery in a way. Like you might have a plan, you might be smarter than me and have a great plan for it. It might have the skill set to pull it off. I don't know if I have the skill set to pull it off. So for me, what has worked is doing what somebody else has done and trying to put my own spin on it a little bit. Like
Right. Right.
being educated is not a unique thing, right? But sometimes we feel like we want to have that secret sauce, and do it different. But it's like, well, if you just look on average, people who do it that way tend to do pretty better over the long haul. So
Yeah.
I'm
Good
not
point.
knocking any other way to do it. Um, I'm just saying in my life and the people that I'm around, and again, it's from my own bias. When I look at the people in my world, whether it's academia or whatnot, people that are usually very diligent, again, that determination,
Mhm.
dedication, discipline comes into it, and that have achieved something worth being proud of, it's usually not by accident. And if you're
Mhm.
going to do something that's in the sciences or whatever, it's usually that methodical piece of it is embedded into the system of what it means to do the scientific process anyways. So you get that
Right.
extra benefit in life, even if you don't do it as a career. So it seems to me a win-win.
I want to point something out too, because when we use the word education, people assume that we're only talking about
Right,
college education, but we're not.
right.
So for the audience listening, we and Professor Lyrical agrees with me on this. Education just means that you learn something.
Absolutely.
It doesn't mean that you went to college. Education for you might be trade school. It could have been stuff that you learned on your own. There are people who are successful in careers because they studied themselves. Like, for example, I'm a professional seamstress. I've been doing
Mm,
wedding gowns for over 20 years. There's no school that I can go to get a piece of paper to officially get a PhD in sewing.
mm.
If there was, I would have it. I'm
Right,
serious.
right.
I've taught sewing. There's nothing more complex than wedding gowns.
Mm.
Absolutely nothing you could sew that's
We
more
see that in the
complex
prices,
than
right?
wedding
We
gowns.
see,
Right.
yeah.
And I make and design them and I've sewn them and I've taught other people how to do it.
Mm.
It's taken me years
Yeah,
of practice of
right,
working in the field. My education was being the alteration manager over at David's Bridal
right, right.
and I was there for 10 years. That was my education.
That's it.
That's
Yep.
where I learned. I learned while I got paid to learn. Even though that wasn't the goal at the time, that's what it became.
Yeah,
And, for those of you listening, I want you to know that when we say education, if traditional school is not set up for your brain and doesn't work for you, it doesn't mean that you don't get the education. If you got to go out there and get it yourself, do it. If you got to
sure.
go online to learn whatever it is you want to learn, do it. And I'm talking about a principle right now. So the details of what you want to learn, I don't know what that is. You can figure that out, but there's always a way for you to learn what you need to learn to get into the field that you want to get into.
Absolutely.
So I'm off my
And
soapbox.
you see that more
Go
than
ahead.
ever now. I mean, with generative AI and all the stuff that we have at our
Hmm.
fingertips now, you can do kind of like the Matrix, like with Keanu Reeves. I know kung fu, kind of thing where you almost can have the information at a snap. But again, it goes back to, let's use your analogy with the being a seamstress. Somebody may hear that story if they didn't hear the work where you said it took years behind the scene and just say, oh, dope, that's a good gig. I could probably do that and become wealthy, right? But they don't hear the work part of it. They don't hear
Yeah.
that. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter how the work is done. In other words, all education is going to do for you, it's going to give you some facts, figures, hopefully some experiential opportunities, some
Hmm.
other people who are mentors along the way, hopefully who are just like guides on the side and aren't trying to be the sage on the stage all the time, right? But give you sort of the encouragement you need, right? That maybe the computer doesn't do quite efficiently yet, right? And point you in the right direction and put you around other experts in the field.
Hmm.
That's maybe what the formalized process does, but it's not any different than whether you're taking martial arts, You're going to go down, you're going to learn a system, and they're going to say, here's your
Right,
belt, or whatever
right,
the thing is they're going
right.
to do. It's you've been led down a path with somebody else who's done it before and has just made more mistakes than you. That's all it really is. Somebody's made more mistakes than you and is trying to maybe help you avoid a couple of them to save you a little bit of time. But still, it's
Yep.
not taking shortcuts. It's just saying, I don't want to send you into a pothole. That's a little different, right? So
I want to point out, you just made me think of this. For the listeners, most of y'all probably don't realize, but your best, and I know this because I had the one of the largest, one of the highest volume bridal shops in America at the time when I was running the alteration department. And that meant I had to have quite a few seamstresses on staff, right? So I did a lot of interviews with people, did a lot of sewing tests, I had a lot of people. And I can tell you some of the best, and I mean, do me the absolute best sewers that you're going to find in this country. 98% of them learned on their own. They did not officially go to school. Take that in for a moment.
Right.
And that's in my field. I can talk about my field. I don't know about all the other fields. You can't do that in medical or law. And obviously you need formal education for those things. And certain types of engineering, most of it. You need formal education for those things. But there are a lot of other fields that you can learn on your own. Some of the seamstresses that I would trust to sew my own stuff learned on their own.
Right.
They learned on their own, and then they took in whatever they could wherever they worked. So they made it a point to learn. But I want to go back to the fact that you got to be disciplined, because if you're not going to be disciplined, don't expect to be successful in anything.
Yeah. I mean, even it's a great point. Even the younger kids who are, let's say coming up in their gaming, right? There's a reason that those kids become elite at gaming, or why kids like it. First of all, the gaming industry is made off, it's in the name, gamification, right? They have a reward and payout system that keeps you going along for the next carrot. And so that's even hard baked into the system. That's what partly makes it so addicting for these kids. First of all, it's social. They're talking, they're playing with their friends these days in most cases, but they're becoming masters mostly on their own. Now, they don't forget, though, they're probably looking up YouTube videos. That's what they weren't doing 20 years ago when kids were playing video games, right? So what they're watching somebody else do it, who's also kind of been through more mistakes than them, right? So the certification stuff is just the extra benefit that industry will use, right? And let's face it, education is an industry as well, right? It's to say, here's our value, it's on paper, we've stamped it, and we've kind of given you this certification, but you don't need that if you have the skill in an industry that doesn't require the certification. You're actually lucky in some cases if you're in an industry that doesn't require the certification.
Right.
But at least it is worth noting that when credentials become important, and they are in a lot of industries, it is certainly nice to have one. And if you don't have one in your industry, you should try to find out a way maybe where you can get it validated so that you can show and prove later and say, yo, I did this. I did put in this work. And don't try to pretend like I didn't, So it's catch-22 sometimes about like needing the certification, because it props up the accreditation board sometimes, and that kind of appear in different industries when maybe it didn't need to be there. But then there's other times where you're like, man, I wish there was some accreditation board who would come in and sanctify all this work that I'm doing so that other people could say, oh, it isn't just me telling you I did this, like somebody else is the witness, right?
I think I love this conversation and pointing out the different types of education that's out there.
Sure.
I just want to make sure people understand, because there's way too many people out there, and especially our youth and some of these older adults who went through this and they've already made life choices because of it. They think they're stupid because they don't fit into our quote unquote education system, which quite frankly is only made for one type of learner.
That's right.
Yeah. And then they end up floating through life and just working at a gas station or working at Walmart or working something else that's minimum wage, that's way beneath their intelligence, because they think they have to. And I want y'all to know, you don't have to. You can learn whatever you want. You just have to, might be creative in the way you learn, depending on what it is, but you can.
Yeah, it's an important point.
Let's talk about the rap industry. You said a few things to me that really prompted much of this conversation. How does someone get their rap music out and successful?
Wow. Well, the getting it out part's the easy part. The successful is the hard part.
Right.
It's easier than ever to get your music out. If you want, when people say, my material is out, it's available on all platforms. Literally anybody can have their music out on all platforms now.
Right.
If you go back to when I was talking about that record, The Focus Is Back, one of the I was signed to a record label called Blaze the World, who at the time had Caroline EMI distribution. EMI was one of the biggest distributors in the world.
Okay.
They lost their distribution, but what the gentleman had at that time, dating it back to 2004, 5, 6, is he had the ability to put the stuff on iTunes, right? And you had to go through a label at that point. So you had to have a label that was at iTunes. You couldn't just say, hey, I wish my stuff was on iTunes. Today, there's middlemen who've come and kind of filled in the void in the industry where there's many companies out there that anybody can just pay a fee and your stuff is instantly uploaded, right? So not everybody knows that, but that's how it works these days. So there's somebody who will take your money and will get it to all of the distribution channels that need be out there. So your stuff's on Spotify and YouTube, blah, 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 right? So that's the easy part. You can just pay for it. It's getting close to the point where it's very similar in terms of actually getting your stuff promoted, right? There are then middlemen out there who will take your money to also promote your stuff. So there's about 200,000 songs a day uploaded to Spotify.
Wow.
We just do some basic probability, right? If you have no budget, what is the probability that somebody's going to find your song by accident when you're competing against the top level songs that have massive campaign pushes behind them, right?
Mm-hmm.
That are pushed out by major labels still, right? The Sonys of the world and the Universals, and they're just, it's automatic. Those songs are going to rise to the cream because they're coming with a marketing budget. Now, they've also made it so that you can pay middlemen to do something similar, right? Whether it's the illegal kind of stuff or the quasi not ethical stuff where you're paying a bot to watch your video and make it look like someone's watching your video, which a lot of the shady overnight companies have done. And now there's a little bit more of a crackdown on that. And by the way, people in the industry can tell the difference immediately. There's all sorts of algorithms to know if you've gained the system and tried to make it look like you're more popular than you are, right?
Okay.
So there's that. But if you have the right budget and you want to do it the correct way, you could, for about $100,000, market a decent song that let's just say is, let's use an academic term, grammatically correct, right? Like if it's not awful and it's like that essay, if it's a C paper, right? And it's grammatically correct, it might be pretty blah, but you might get the C or maybe the B minus. You can take that equivalent of a musical song, and with $100,000, your song's going to pretty much be a hit in whatever genre it is, meaning a hit on like Spotify and YouTube. It's going to have a lot of views, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you have the right marketing campaign, you can find even the wrong marketing campaign with that kind of money. Now, if you magnify that by times 10, well, you're going to probably find yourself with the ability, and again, a decent song, right? A decent song with $1 million campaign, you're probably going to crack major charts like Billboard and so forth. That's the amount of money that you're playing within, 100,000 to $1 million. So if you don't have that, it's more of a pipe dream for an artist to say, someone's going to find and hear my song just because I'm good, right? So we're now in an era where anybody can get out, but any good artist might not get discovered unless there's a lot of constant repetition, planning, thoughtfulness, frugalness, right? Trial and error, making a lot of mistakes along the way, but it's not for the faint of heart, and it's not for the people who have small budgets. If you do have a small budget, you just got to be incredibly diligent and really think hard about what you're doing. And again, like we were talking about in education, find somebody else who's kind of done it and gone through it to save yourself a lot of the hassle. That's just to get heard, right? But that doesn't mean you're going to be good when you do a show, or you're even going to get booked to do shows, or the people are going to buy your material or buy your merch, right? Those are all different strategies. And some people have one or two. It's kind of like basketball. Some people can shoot, but some people can shoot and they can dribble the rock. And they can play defense, and they can pass. Those people end up in the league, right?
Yeah,
the rest of us were like playing on the weekends, right? You know what I'm saying? So it's that kind of thing. So I hope that helps a little.
What I hear is not just putting it out there, but the marketing of it.
Yeah.
And so can a person become successful without a lot of a big budget for marketing?
Yeah, but you got to do it a different way, and it does take longer.
Yeah, it does.
And you have to know, like any industry, right? You got to know what's your target. I'll say my formula quickly. It's not for everybody, and it's kind of not traditional in terms of a few things, but while I would love to have songs that have millions and millions of views, my typical songs might have a few thousand or maybe a couple 100,000 views, right? And they don't come with large, massive marketing campaigns, right? It's just not the lifestyle that I'm living, and it's not really where my bread is buttered. I do mostly college shows. I do a lot of corporate stuff. I write for songs, movies, television, that kind of stuff as well. And I perform and I speak. So for me, what's important is when I come to your school, that person at that school is recommending me to somebody else to book me, right? And so for
Mm,
all the artists out there that aren't aware, if you wonder, hey, what's that artist getting paid to do that college show? They're probably getting paid very well, maybe 10 times more than they would to play in your local club, right? So the average college that nobody knows about, nobody's even hearing you about doing the show, and you might have done a show for 100 or 1,000 or more, could pay you 10 times more than the local club could pay. Because most times local clubs aren't paying you anything. But if you're lucky
yeah.
enough to get $300-$500 from a club, let's go crazy and say 1,000, you're probably pretty good and have a local fan base that's large. If you're getting up around $1,000, colleges are going to pay you 10 times that just off the rip. And if you have something to say that's of interest in a college market, right? If you're about something like we were talking about at the beginning, those numbers can incrementally grow, if not exponentially, after time. So for me, that's my world, which doesn't necessarily focus on millions and millions of views. Would I love to have millions and millions of views every time I put out a record? Absolutely. But the kind of music that's conducive to doing what I just said sometimes isn't the kind of music that's conducive to millions and millions of views. You
Right,
can be
right.
happy with tens or hundreds of thousands of views and be like, wow, I really did it with this one. You know what I'm saying? So
But
I'm a
you're
little bit more
actually
of what's that?
making you but it sounds like you're actually making more money than 99% of
Yeah,
them.
it's more, and it's more the kind of stuff that you can look back at 15 years and could still be relevant, right?
Yeah,
Because you're
yeah,
not
good
trying
point,
to
good
do
point.
what's to today. Like I pay
Yeah.
attention to what everything sounds like in every era, and I've been around for a long time. It's like I never think my music is stuck out as, gee, that's like incredibly old, or gee, that's incredibly in the future. It's kind of right around the area without too much trend appeal. And if you do that, you can have a long career. You might never be super big at any particular moment, but you can ride out a lot of, waves and gaps and mountains and peaks kind of stuff.
I wanna reiterate something you said, really kinda you've said a few times throughout this interview. Those big wigs, getting up there to the top of your game, being the number one person everybody sees, those are the outliers.
Yeah, right. Right.
That's it's not impossible, but it's barely possible, so set realistic expectations, I would like
Yeah,
to
and
do that.
I think a realistic one, and a lot of people will say, I'm going to be the next Bill Gates, or I'm going to be blah blah blah. Start with your city, and KRS was famous for saying this.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
like,
that's true.
you be the hottest dude in your block, be the hottest dude in your neighborhood, be the hottest dude
Mm,
in your town, then your city,
that's
then
good
your state.
advice.
It's like being in the mix for your city is a realistic goal, I think, for a lot of artists. And a lot of people don't know what that looks like and don't know how fruitful that can actually be. There's plenty of artists who are just the biggest artist or one of them in their local town and have been that way
Mhm.
for years, and they're not household names, but they still have careers. And by the way, they play overseas and get paid to do it regularly. So,
Yeah, I could think
so
of a local group I'm thinking of right now, they probably do better than most of these ones that try to go national. And it's
absolutely.
just like we
Yeah.
teach in other areas of business and marketing. Find your focus
Yep.
and find your niche and stick with that because it's I will say, sometimes it's better to have 1,000 genuine followers, genuine people that genuinely follow you, go to your concerts, go to your events, go to your whatever you're doing, than to have 1,000,000 and none of them are paying attention.
Oh my gosh, you
You
hit it.
the one with the
That
1,000,000
is
numbers, you have no power at all. The
the
one with
math.
1,000 followers has power because if they put something out to
Yep.
those followers are gonna do something with that.
That's right. The math is on
And
your side. If every
and
time
they'll
you
get
put
their
out
friends to
something,
come, you know?
that's right. They will, if they like you like that. And, it's the concept of a super fan, right? It's like if you can have a
Good point.
couple of super fans in each town, if you can have a couple people who as the artist that you could reach out to, and if you said, hey, I'm going to do a show, could you get 10 people to come to it? If you have those, you're usually set. And those are
Yeah.
very, very hard to get, and they're very slept on. And sometimes people laugh at people like that. They go, look at this. People call them like a stan, like an Eminem song, right? Like that super fan stan, like that was the obsessive fan, right?
Mhm.
But people will laugh sometimes at your fans that are like that. And it's like, you got to respect those people. Those people sometimes like your music more than you do. And they know more about you than you might forget about yourself, right? And they're invaluable people. And I see artists laugh about that kind of stuff all the time. And I'm like, give me 5 people like that. Like, to your analogy, give me 5 people over that, over the 1,000 who just kind of like you. You give me 5 super
Yeah.
fans, they're going to be with you for your life. Those
Yep.
1,000 people who like what you're doing right now, but can't be bothered to change their calendar
Mhm.
around to come out and see you when you come to town, they're not paying your bills. Those
No, the
5 super
super fans will
fans,
buy everything you sell them.
they buy everything you have, and they'll change their date to be there, and they'll tell other people about you. It's like they're on payroll. It's like, so
Yeah,
you cannot find enough people like that. You got to respect those fans.
I
So,
agree.
yeah.
Now, tell us, for someone listening, what is a big no-no? What should they give them some advice of what not to do in the industry?
I think acting like you're bigger than you are. Uh, Nobody wants to root for the massive, clear victor all the time, right? I've been in. Let me use a rap battle analogy. I was in a battle in Portsmouth. It was called the Iron Mike battle, and I have a long battle record as a rapper, right? And I went up to this on the sneak. Went up with my crew of 3 other people. We went there. We're like, "Yo, Lyrical, let's go make some money, right? Let's go up to this battle and go crush these people that have no idea you're even there, right?" And before they realize that it's too late. So we did this, right? We went up to this battle. It's called the Iron Mike battle in Portland, Maine. Portland, Maine's a big city, right?
Mhm.
Relatively big city in Maine. It's one of the few. We go up to Portland, and the Iron Mike has, I believe at the time, 64 rappers in it. Okay. And I
Wow.
called and said, "Yo, I'm going to come. I was one of the last people to get in, waited to the end. So they weren't promoting it. And at the time and this was probably like 2007 or something like that. It was like $1,000 or something like that, which was pretty big money back then. Right. I'd go up, and I did the first, everybody did 64 rappers, right? That's 32 battles. Think about how long this is going to be.
Yeah.
They're all battling each other. The crowd's listening. And what they did different in this battle is at the end of every round, they ranked the leaderboard, right? In first place, we have Lyrical. And the place is all like, "Yo, Lyrical crushed that cat," right? They do it again the next round, and they whittle it down, right? It just cuts, the number goes from 64 to 32 to 16, right? It just keeps getting down until you get down to 2 people. So they did this, and they kept saying my name, and I was doing really well, right? All night. They're like,
Mhm.
"Oh, by the time you're in your 4th battle, people want the underdog to win," right? So when you come out like, "Yo, look at me, I'm crushing this dude," after a while, people just don't want you to win. It's just common sense. It's like, it's a human
That
nature.
is true. That is
And it's the
true.
same thing if you're winning in life all the time. There's going to be someone salty on the sideline who's like, "Look at this dude. You may not even think you're better than you are. They have a whiff of it, right? They have a whiff that you think that you're better than you are." And that'll humble you really quick, because that person is the one nipping at your ankles to try to take you down. Like, well, it doesn't have to be, dramatic stuff, but they just might be like, you pass them this sticker and they're like, throw it in the trash kind of thing. Right? You know what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
acting like you're already there, and even when you are there, remember not to act like you're already there, I think goes a long way. So that would be my
Mhm.
answer, because you don't want those people turning on you that were loving you just a few rounds earlier. You know what I'm saying?
You've got a valid point, and that's probably, and I'm not even into rap at all, and that is the number one advice that I was thinking already in my head. So, because I think it's true. I think it's true across the board in other industries too, not just in rap and entertainment. But I love that you said that. So, tell the audience what you have coming up and how can people find you.
So I have an album actually that I've been working on for a long time. It's called Doc Deplored. And we originally were trying to get it out at the end of 2024, and then we knew it turned into a 2025 project. So I don't want to date the project, but it's all
Okay.
produced by my man, Jay Johnson. Jay Johnson has done a few of my singles. If you look up No, which I have a video for, Jay Johnson produced that, and he's got a lo-fi vibe. And so we've been working on well over a year making this album, 15 tracks, all produced by him. It's relatively lo-fi, so look for it. Doc Deplored, that's my actual last name. And it features Jay Johnson. So check that out. We'll be following that up with as much performance as we can do to support it live. But even if you can't come out and check it live, check it out wherever you can hear it and look for it. And for the rest of, in terms of like, I know by the time people a lot of times check out a podcast, something's come and gone. But check me out at professorlyrical.com. That's my website. All my socials are Pro Lyrical or Professor Lyrical. I'm in a duo called Pro Quo as well. My old crew, X Cow, we're still putting out music as well. So short for Excalibur. Shout out to my man Fee. So those are the projects that I work on. So if you see any of those, Professor Lyrical, ProQuo, Xcal, that's all me. Continue
And
to put
all
out
of
as
that
much
is on
music
your
as I can.
website, right?
Yeah, it's all on
Okay.
professorlyrical.com. And, bring me out to a college that you're at and I'll be there. Right.
I love that you do this at colleges. I think it's really cool. Well, Professor Lyrical, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you.
I
Kim.
always enjoy talking to you, and I hope that the listeners really get a lot out of the only little bit of wisdom that you shared today, because you have a lot more.
I
But
appreciate it. If we give them too much, we can't make the mind shift happen. You know what I
nah,
mean?
yeah, good point.
You don't want to flip it 360 or 180. You just gotta give them a little bit. Be like,
Yeah, it's true. Well, once again, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And now for a mind-shifting moment. I want to plant this thought seed in your head. First, go back and listen to this episode again. Professor Lyrical gave a ton of really good practical advice that applies across careers in general, not just the entertainment industry. But something I want to point out is, what is it you want to do? I don't care how old you are. What is it you really want to do that you haven't done yet or you're thinking about doing? You can go for it. You do not have to follow traditional paths to get to where you want to go. That's like keeping you in a box. Why would you want to imprison yourself? Find a creative way to educate yourself in the area in which you want to reign supreme and go for it. He did, and he's successful. And like he said, you can be too. Thank you for listening to Mindshift Power Podcast. Please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel at The Mindshifter. If you have any comments, topic suggestions, or would like to be a guest on the show, please visit fatimabay.com/podcast. Remember, there's power in shifting your thinking. Tune in for next week.